There was a really fascinating data set that was posted online this week, just looking at the data of how married couples met each other. And it was sort of showing the change over time in graph form. And it used to be that people met through family was far and away the most common way people met. And then there would be school, and then maybe through friends, and then your neighborhood and your church, or at a restaurant or a bar or in college. And then online, of course, was 0.0% back in the 30s. But now that is by far and away the biggest share of the way people are meeting is online. However, there is some more data suggesting, and there was a Breakpoint commentary that you and Shane put together this week about the fact that fewer people are using dating apps. They're kind of on the way out in terms of the zeitgeist. They're kind of not cool anymore, or at least they're at their lowest user levels, I think, since 2019. So what are people just not meeting at all, or are people going back to a different way of meeting? But what does this tell you in a broader sense about where culture is right now?
Well, I think it tells us two things. One is where is culture, but also what kind of creatures are human beings, right? There's this resiliency of in-person connection that people don't want to abandon. That chart, so it's a visual chart. It's kind of an animated chart that moves as the years go. And the numbers are really shocking. First of all, back whenever it starts, which I don't remember the year anyway, but it was pre-internet. I can confirm that. You have family and you have friends and you have church at the top of the list. And to watch, particularly through the 90s and 2000s, those numbers just bottom out, right? I mean, just bottom out to single digits or less. And then to watch the online number not only grow and take the top spot, but be more than the family number and the friends number was back before there was an internet. In other words, that the ascendancy of online hookups was not just replacing family. It was basically reflecting how much the internet and digital life has taken over the world. And part of that is stuff we've talked about here in the past, this shift that we're immediately in, and historians will be writing about it for generations, just like they write about the Industrial Revolution. This is the information revolution. And when we talk about a social revolution, we're not just talking about the addition of a resource like the internet to our lives. We're talking about reframing how we think about almost everything, right? I mean, look, the Arab Spring reframed by online life. So there you have international and so a country level uprising. The Hamas attacks of October 7th. Here you have warfare and terrorism changed, lived out and experienced differently because of the digital revolution. Those are extreme examples. We could talk about the market. We could talk about access to cryptocurrencies. We could talk about, Hulu over ABC. There's a million things we can talk about. So why wouldn't relationships be one of those? But it was stunning to me. And maybe it was just the visual, and it was kind of like this. Oh, it used to be family, friends, and church. Those things didn't just bottom out and get replaced by online hookups and connections overwhelmed it. Now, look, I've got friends, I've got family members, I'm guessing you do too, who met online and who have great marriages. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it's not like, it's always bad, but it is interesting that these apps now have become so kind of specified to what the user is looking for. Like, are they just looking for fling? Are they just looking for I think, isn't there like a farmers looking for wives app? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah, right? I think it's called the farmer's wife or something like that. Yeah, they get very niche.
And then there's these, ethnic specific groups, which, when I hear the commercial, I'm like, are we allowed to do that anymore? There's just a lot of this stuff. So it is interesting to see the frustration. And I think at least part of the frustration that we talked about on Breakpoint in a commentary this past week was just there's a resiliency that humans are made for personal connection. We've talked about this when it comes to church and worship. Disembodied life is not fully human. It doesn't feel fully human. And eventually, I think it runs out. It's interesting too that some of these apps, there's one like that says, this is an app that was designed to be deleted. Like the whole point is so you never have to do this again. So it's kind of Right. So it's kind of selling this, no, we're this good that we're going to be able to give you a long-term relationship. And then I saw another one in the paper this past week. Yes, the newspaper, the actual
Oh my
newspaper.
gosh, so
I know,
old.
isn't that crazy? A story, ironically, about an online app from a couple who met online. And the point of their app is to meet face-to-face in person as quickly as possible once it's deemed, I guess, safe or whatever. So, the whole thing is changing. And I do think, there's probably a whole bunch of explanations. I do think what it points to is the resiliency of what it truly is to be a human person and to be embodied and to, be, in person, particularly when you're talking about something like marital love or romantic love. That means it's also an opportunity for the group of people in our culture who should have known that to begin with.
Right, totally. The church, you mean?
Well, yeah, at least the church, yeah, but definitely the church.
At least the church. I think it also talks about not just the nature of being human, but the nature of relationships, because like the only way for these apps to exist is even the one that, with good intentions is saying we hope to not exist after you meet your person. Now, obviously, their bottom line kind of depends on that not being the case, I would assume. But the idea is that there's somebody out there that's right for you and there's somebody who's not right for you. And the way to determine that is some sort of algorithm. And I don't mean to suggest that the algorithm can't be very intentionally and smartly put together. And there is certainly a lot to be said for compatibility and people who don't belong together because their temperaments or their worldviews are so fundamentally opposed that it would never work. All of that is true, but it does sort of imply to everybody involved that there's like a set of characteristics that you should be looking for. And that's the most critical part of a relationship, as opposed to what I'm guessing was the older way of doing things, which was the commitment is a decision that you make later, understanding that people will sometimes not be like, there's no two people that are going to be fundamentally compatible on all 100 points of personality that Myers-Briggs has developed or whatever it might be. And I think sometimes these apps probably have given not just the people who use them, but the world that they're a part of, given all of us this idea or perpetuated the idea of like, there's people who you'll work with and people who you absolutely will not work with. And you should make your list and then check it off and then everything will be fine. And it won't require long suffering or perseverance or whatever because you did the algorithm right. And I think, I don't know if people are waking up to that and that's why these aren't working, but I do know that's just a fundamental flaw of these to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was built into a lot of the systems. If you go back to the very first dating app, eHarmony, or online dating site. Remember that guy? Yeah. I mean, that guy was a believer at a Christian college, a psychologist. And, he built in compatibility factors, but also added, commitments and beliefs and values. And that whole platform got turned upside down when they were pressured and succumbed to the pressure to hook up same-sex couples. But you're right that a lot of these apps reduced down human relationships, just like you reduce down the human person. So if you can disembody, the human person, you can also reduce relationships down to just being compatibility. And to your point, I mean, yeah, listen, there's obviously things that attract you to another person, but if you're looking for those things to carry long-term compatibility, like, let me just tell you, nobody's compatible in the long term.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, exactly. That's exactly right. I think I've mentioned this maybe months ago here in the program, but this reminds me of maybe the most impactful single seminary class I ever sat in, which was a pastoral ethics class at Reformed Theological Seminary, in which the instructor, who was actually both a adjunct professor at the seminary and a pastor, shared wisdom on and went through the ethics of the Ten Commandments. That was the course. And when you start kind of digging beneath something like, don't commit adultery, you realize that basic command implies an awful lot about have a good marriage, right? And be the kind of husband that you need to be. And of course, the Ten Commandments are the summary of all the other things that the Bible talks about in these terms. And he really hammered away at the compatibility factor. And in each of those commandments, he would then point to Christ in the New Testament and show how, the New Testament, Jesus said, I came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So when Jesus talks about marriage, he uses it as the illustration of his love for the church. And, so I'm supposed to love my wife like Christ loved the church. Like, sure, no problem. Let me get right on that one. That's crazy. But he really hammered the compatibility on that point and said, Christ and the church aren't compatible. We were sinners. So his love is shown not by what attracts us, but honestly, and he used this word, what repels us. And so really the choice you have to make is about that. It's about a choice to love, and attraction can't carry that. What app is going to get this right? Which is why it's such a tragedy to see family and church in particular bottom out as the two of the top places that couples used to meet and no longer are. What an opportunity for the church. I mean, what if one of the great missions of the church, our conference this year is the church being the church. Maybe we should just do that. How to replace dating apps for how to hook people up, is that, I don't know.
Come to the Colson Center conference. Maybe we should have a singles.
We could have a mingler. A
single mingle. Oh, man.
Oh man, people are.
I want to come to that and just spy on everybody. It would be so dramatic.
You should come and get to work, man. You need to I feel
start
like you could do
matches.
it. You could just say, okay. Yeah, hey, you need to meet so and so.
Okay, I love this. Okay.